I need to get a better mic. It's it's on the list.
There's a long list, I bet.
Always, always, always.
I'm Azzy, and you guys know in chat we do this on a monthly basis. We do the AzzCast. It's a podcast where we can talk about different types of people, learn about their backgrounds, their histories, their passions, what they're working on, or what they're going forward trying to do. If they're gamers, if they're developers, if they're streamers. Floyd, get that out of the camera. And today we are joined by Tuff. Now, there is some history behind that name. I don't know yet. We're all going to learn together and we're going to find out. So, Tuff, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule because you stream twice a day.
On Mondays, I stream twice a day, but thank you for having me. I'm going to be streaming more here very soon, too. So, yeah.
we're both a little excited. So, you
Oh,
guys,
yeah.
you guys know from being in the stream today, you guys know I'm excited about a certain topic. I messaged Tuff just to give him a bit of a warning and say I'm maybe like an excitable little child.
Me too.
And
Me
his
too.
response was me too. So let's go off to
Yeah.
a good start. So before getting into anything about streaming or anything like that, where does your name come from? Where does Tough come from?
Uh, my name is an acronym for a role-playing game system, a pen and paper role-playing game system that I am writing and have been developing for about 4.5 years, and it's Tower Universal Fantasy. It's not yet published, but I hope to do so in the future.
Okay. Is that like the first? Is that how you got into development? Just the passion behind stuff and wanting.
Yeah. It's my involvement in development has been purely accidental. I mean, I've played Dungeons and Dragons since way back. I mean, I started in 1978, right?
Has it been
And
going that long?
oh yeah,
Oh wow. Okay.
that was the early days. But I was 5, and my mother was my DM, and
Oh wow.
yeah, and I heard about what was going on. I'm like, it's like Lord of the Rings. I want to play. I want to play. I want to play. I want to be Gandalf.
Yeah. I have to
And
unfortunately play as a hobbit or a dwarf, and my
I
chat will
have
not let
been
me forget it.
I have been a game nerd my whole life,
Okay.
and as much as I love role playing and RPGs and stuff and fantasy, um, one of the biggest driving factors that got me into all those things that I've had a love for all of my life is swords.
Okay.
All right. Like, I know I wanted to be Gandalf at first, but Gandalf had a sword. He had magic too,
He
but he also had a
he
sword.
did.
That was important to me, you know? And so, like, I have been fascinated by swords and all things medieval and fantasy my whole life. I can't remember a time when I haven't, and it has led me down so many roads. And uh, we can talk about a few of them here today.
Hmm. So tell us a bit more about yourself. You've got a very extensive bio on your Twitch channel.
Yeah,
You are a
I could have written
writer.
more too.
So you just hit the character limit then.
Pretty much.
So a
I
bit about
always hit the
yourself.
character limit. Well, I am a retired Coast Guard sailor. I did 20 plus years in the U.S. Coast Guard. I grew up in the Midwest, and I've been all over the country and to several other countries. What's pertinent here, though, is that my fandom has taken me lots of different places. I've done about 30 years of medieval martial arts reenactment combat. I've been with the Society for Creative Anachronism. I've been with HEMA, which is the Historical European Martial Arts Association. I've been in MEMAG, and I've been if people are dressing up in armor and hitting themselves and others with large sword-like objects, I've done it. All right.
Okay.
I've done Japanese swordsmanship. I've done Italian swordsmanship, German swordsmanship, Chinese. I've been there. All right. Uh,
So has that been around
and
quite a long time then? Because
yes,
when growing
yes.
up, I didn't see anything like that until,
Well,
and this,
it it
pardon
depends where
me,
you're at. Yeah. Sorry.
pardon my ignorance, but I think the first time I really saw it was a film called Role Models, where there was like a live action role playing on there. But around here, like in Britain and in Wales, I don't really see a lot of it going. But I guess I'm not in those circles.
There are a lot of historical combat societies in Europe these days.
Hmm.
10, 15 years ago it was a different story.
Yeah.
There were some, but they didn't have as much public eye as they have now.
Okay.
Uh, it's it's really the whole historical reenactment, medieval martial arts, all that stuff has really exploded in the last decade to 15 years. I mean, yeah, it's gone right along with the rise in popularity of Dungeons and Dragons and Stranger Things, and all this stuff, all this great nerddom has just been bubbling up.
Yeah, it's definitely getting to the
Yeah,
surface.
yeah, and I mean, when I was a kid, all right, in the 70s and 80s, I used to get beat up by kids because I did this stuff and called a Satan worshiper, and I literally had kids' parents telling them that they couldn't be anywhere near me because they were afraid of their children's souls.
You didn't grow up in
Because I
Salem then.
No, and I grew up in Granite City, Illinois, right outside of St. Louis, but it was the same all over. They called it the Satanic Panic,
Oh,
and it
really?
was yeah, and there was a huge pushback from religious groups and the religious right. Oh, you got a little kitten too. He's so cute.
We do have
But
a kid.
I love cats. But there was a lot of pushback from religious communities in the early to mid '80s.
Hmm.
Movies were made, propaganda was spun. It was a big, big deal. And yeah, we don't have time to go into that, but it was called the Satanic Panic, and some of your viewers, I'm sure, will know about it. But
I'm sure they
yeah,
will.
it was a big thing, and I lived through some of it. I am a Satanic Panic survivor, man.
You get a badge for that.
You should, you should.
So you also stream on Twitch.
Yes.
And how did you start streaming, or how did you get into it? Did you
Again
fall
by
into it?
accident.
Yeah. Okay.
Again by accident. Unsurprisingly, I play a video game called Dungeons and Dragons Online,
Hmm.
which is a 17-year-old MMORPG that's really fantastic for its age. I mean,
Huh?
but I'm going to hear that for being 17 years old, it's great. And I started watching Twitch because there were some streamers that streamed DDO, and I wanted to learn how to play the game better and be more competitive. And I started wanting to do it a little bit more seriously, right?
Hmm.
And so I started watching Twitch, and I kind of fell into the community there, and I got to know some people and got to like some people, and you know at the end of last year in December, all of a sudden everyone's off doing holiday stuff with their family and no one's streaming hardly, and it was kind of lonely. And my family, my one of my sons that you just saw walk by, my other son that you may have seen back over there, my wife, all have full-time jobs. I'm retired. They all have full-time jobs, and they were working extra hours
Hmm.
and getting that fat holiday money, and it's kind of lonely. So I was like, well, none of the guys I watch are streaming, so I can't really listen to them and play my game. So I've got a Twitch account. Let me stream a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And I had always intended to stream some. I thought maybe I would stream role playing sessions of my role playing game, which, by the way, that's a lot harder than it sounds to do it well. Wow, like Matt Mercer, guys like that, they're amazing because they make that stuff fun, and that's crazy. But anyway, so I started streaming early-ish December,
Okay.
and the DDO community came out for me.
Oh,
All
nice.
right. I mean, I got so many follows. I got so much activity going on. I was offered affiliate December 17th,
Okay.
and I've been streaming as an affiliate pretty much daily since then.
Yeah.
And the DDO community is a great bunch of people, and they supported me. And I mean, I was doing it because I was kind of lonely, and all of a sudden I had a community, and I decided, hey, I'll do the affiliate thing, and people started throwing money at me. I was like, oh my god, people are spending money. I better learn how to do this right,
Yeah.
you know. and I still don't really know how to do it right, but I'm getting better.
I don't think anyone does. I don't think anyone does. I make mistakes daily.
I
I,
mean, Spud Hunter's pretty good.
yeah.
And some
Spud's
of them,
definitely got his niche.
he's so I love the way he does the scene transitions and stuff. I have no idea how he gets all that technical stuff so quick, but a lot of streamers out there are pretty good. I'm
Mhm.
not one of them really, but that's how I got into streaming. It was just an accident.
It's a good
And
story though.
then yeah, and then um, right after Christmas, the day after, I found something. It was a game called Dark and Darker, and I found it the day after the third play test ended, right? The December play test.
Oh,
I
bad
found it
timing.
the next day. And my first thought when I saw it was, holy cow, this looks like a reimagining of Thief the Dark Project.
Yes.
And I was a big player of Thief and Thief 2 and Thief 3, and there are no more Thief titles. I don't care what anyone says. The only other Thief title is the Dark Project, which is fan made and the best Thief game ever made. Right. And so I'm a big fan of the Thief franchise. And I saw them like, ooh, I want to try that out. So, I spent the next 2-ish months devouring every video I could on Dark and Dark because it looked so cool. And I played Playtest 4 and I was miserable at it. I was so bad. But I loved it.
That's the
I
fun
had a
though.
great time, and that's what matters, right?
Every time you go
And
into those dungeons, the
yeah,
first player's
yeah,
like, okay, I'll try this game out. And then
yeah.
the game
And
rips you a new one.
because like I'm an MMORPG player.
Hmm.
One MMORPG. I have played some MechWare Online. I'm a founder there. I've been playing it off and on, but it really doesn't prepare you for the first person shooter combat title that Dark and Darker is,
Yeah.
right? It's not the same kind of gameplay.
No.
And Dark and Darker is hard, right? So I was bad. I was spectacularly bad. you but I'm getting better. And I also played Playtest 5. And that's where the rubber meets the road, I think, for this interview, because you wanted to talk to me about something specific. Do you want to segue into it, or shall I?
I'm gonna throw a curveball.
Okay, you do that.
In your bio, you also say you are a writer.
Yes.
And is that
Trying.
okay? So you're trying it. So
Yeah.
what don't you do at this point?
Um,
If you got to think about it,
not a
that's
very big. It's not a very big list. I've been an electrician. I'm a blacksmith and a swordsmith. I built my own electrical ovens for my shop. I built my own shop. I've done electrical and mechanical maintenance, both in and out of the Coast Guard. I've worked in a train yard. I grew up as a lifeguard and a swim instructor, and I did scouts and camping, and I've got way too many hobbies. I've been a professional juggler, man. Like, yeah, I was the Patrick Henry Mall juggler for about 6 or 7 months, years and years ago. So my ADHD moves me from thing to thing to thing. I get passionate about something. I do it like crazy for a little while, and then I move on. A couple of the few things that I've never moved on from are swords, fantasy, and that's about it.
Args is saying, can you tango?
Uh, I mean, not well, but yeah, I know the basics.
There you go, Hugs. There you go.
I can do the basics and cha-cha and waltz.
It's more than me. They're not saying me dance. That's enough. So
And yeah, go ahead.
you
Sorry.
you've obviously led a busy life, and then you thought, okay, after retirement, I'm going to choose a really stressful kind of career, being streaming.
It really doesn't stress me. I don't. You see, I'm retired from the Coast Guard. I have a retirement check coming to me every month. It doesn't matter if my stream tanks, and it has been tanking the last few months because you get ups and downs when you're a small streamer, as I'm sure you know,
Yep.
because we've all been there, whether we're there now or not. We've been there because
Yep.
that's where you start. When you're a small streamer, you'll have some months that are pretty good, some months that are decent, and some months that are ghost towns. And
Yes.
I've had a couple of ghost town months recently, And I mean, it's starting to bounce back. So, but I'm still doing it because I'm enjoying it. It's not
Yeah, yeah, you're
stressing.
doing it for the enjoyment.
Yeah, I'm not paying my bills off it yet. I mean, it's helped a couple times, but uh, yeah. So it's no, I don't find it stressful at all.
That's good.
Yeah.
So I told my chat and I've told all my community uh, that I'm meeting a real life blacksmith. And obviously,
Yep.
here you are. How did
Yep.
you fall into it? Now, you've obviously said that from a young age you loved Lord of the Rings and you loved swords, and so that was obviously the stem or the
As
part of it.
long as I have had an imagination, as long as I have been conscious of myself, I have fantasized about owning swords, using swords, and making swords.
Okay.
Okay. And I mean, like when I was young, I did a lot of research, and I was convinced that you needed a large amount of really expensive machinery, like power hammers and presses, and you know, heavy machinery to make swords in the modern day. And I don't know why I thought that, or well, I thought you needed either that or you needed a team of 4 to 6 strapping young lads with big sledgehammers, right,
Yeah, yeah.
in order to make a sword. And so, I was like, well, I'm a poor kid. I don't have a job that pays me that sort of money. I'm a lifeguard, I mean, or I'm in the Coast Guard. I don't make that kind of money, and I don't have the time to do it. So it was just kind of something that was on the back burner. And I satisfied my itch by getting together armor and buying swords and doing the fighting.
Okay.
And that was great. I loved it. I mean, I authorized for official combat activities for the first time in 1991, and I went to tournaments and wars and events for religiously for 20 years, and then I started slowing down about uh, 2011. I started to realize I'm too old for this stuff.
No such thing.
I had
No such
yeah.
thing.
Oh man, I had a bout with a young dude that was like a 17, 18-year-old guy, right, great big guy, and I won because I was old and wily, but I broke some ribs in the process,
Oh
and
wow.
it was so painful, and it put me out for so long. And I was just like, you know what? I don't know about the whole tournament thing anymore. You know, I'm like, maybe I'll ratchet it back a little bit more casual, right? And I've been just more and more casual since then. And nowadays I have knees full of arthritis, and I've got a blown labrum in my right shoulder. And the injuries and the wear are starting to mount up, and so it's just not even hardly fun anymore to go out and hit people with swords.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm moving. So the first thing I did is I found out that no, you didn't need all that crazy stuff to make swords, and
Was
I
that
I
just by
found
research or was that by meeting someone?
by meeting someone.
Okay.
I met a person named Angus Trim, and Gus is one of the best swordsmiths in the whole world.
Okay.
Although he would tell you he's not a smith, he's a machinist. He makes his stuff on a CNC lathe, right?
Okay.
And it's computerized. And he researches all the historical swords, and he's put calipers and micrometers all over historical antiques and stuff. And through him, I met a bunch of other people that are also into the historical documentation of swords. And I really just got really wrapped up into all these people, and got some really fantastic information. And just from talking with Gus, I learned so much about how historically accurate swords are made. Um, that one day I was sitting there, I was like, I want a forge. I'm like, I can buy a propane forge, and it's not that expensive. Maybe I'll just make like hilt parts and stuff, and like do customization, right?
Mhm.
And that's how it started. And I did some of those, and I was very meticulous about it, and I tried to use all the things I learned from Gus to make things better. And I was like pretty much the one of the very few people in the whole world that Gus would allow to modify his stuff and still call it an A-trim sword, right?
Okay.
Uh, because I learned his methods, and I followed them. And it wasn't long before making parts and pieces turned into, oh, I want to make a kitchen knife. I want to make a utility knife. Make a blade, harden it. Oh, and then one day, um, about 10 years ago, my one of my sons came up and said, "Hey, Dad, holiday weekend coming up. You got the weekend off. It's a 4-day weekend, right?" I was like, "Yeah." "You want to do a project with the forge?" I'm like, "Yeah, okay, sure. I'm always down for that. What do you want to make?" And he said, "How about a sword?"
And
And I was like, "Well, we can try."
how did
And
it
you know
go?
what? Well, I can show you. Uh, he wanted to make a. I think I can show you. Can I show you? Yeah, I know I've got. We made an attempt at a katana. Now,
Okay.
uh, in the quench, some things didn't work out the way I would hope, and it turned out straighter than it ought to be, and it's kind of horrible, honestly. But
But
as a first sword made by hand, it's really not that bad. It's got a little bit of a curve to it, but it's almost closer to a ninja toe. And people who are Japanese swords enthusiasts would make a huge long list of all the things that are wrong with it. But I managed to make the habaki collar, a tsuba guard, a handle that's not wrapped correctly, but it's good and grippy, right?
yeah.
And it's balanced pretty well, and it's light and lively as a sword should be,
So
and it's
you gotta be
it's
like
sharp.
happy and impressed with that being a first real
It,
attempt.
yeah, it was pretty impressive. And I mean, yeah, there's lots of things wrong with it, but I mean,
I'd never be able to tell you what's wrong
what
with it.
what uh what is it if you do a thing and you're spectacular perfect at it the first time you do it, one of two things is going on.
You're gonna
Either
stop.
it's something that's really really easy
Yep.
and not really a deep craft, and therefore maybe isn't even worth pursuing that long, or some sort of divine inspiration has happened. You've gotten very lucky, and who knows if it's going to be able to happen again, right? So no, I wasn't great at it at first, but um, my second sword was a whole lot better, and my third sword was a whole lot better, and my fourth and my fifth, they just kept getting better. And you know, I have made uh, what I am reasonably certain is the most accurate recreation of the Thorpe falchion in the world. And the Thorpe falchion is a specific antique sword held at Norwich Castle in England.
Mhm.
And the falchion lays on a table, one side down, one side up, right? And people only ever see one side. It's very old, it's very corroded, and it's a very delicate shape. So no one is really allowed to go in and touch it hardly,
Okay.
except for a few people.
Yeah.
And I happen to know one of them. There's a gentleman named James Elmsley who is the not one of, but the number one falchion and single edged medieval sword researcher in the whole world. He is number one. He knows more about these type of swords than anyone in the world, bar none. And he's one of those guys that I have a working friendship with.
Mhm.
And so when I had a customer say they wanted a Thorpe falchion, I reached out to James for advice, and he was like, "Okay, hey, here's a blueprint of the thing that I made while I had the Thorpe falchion in my hands." And it turns out his blueprint is accurate down to 1/10 of 1 millimeter.
Oh, wow.
Like, no kidding, right? And he's like, "Oh, and I just happened to have made a wax duplicate of the pommel while I was there. That's perfectly accurate in volume and size. We did a we did a not liquid but a volumetric air measurement. It was a thing that uses air like water, and it was like this a displacement thing, but
Yeah.
they used air so they wouldn't damage the sword. They used a volumetric measurement machine on the pommel to tell him how much material was in it, whether it was solid or hollow, and so he had this wax replica that was pretty much exactly the pommel, and The only thing he didn't like about it is the graver he used was a square tooth, and so the bottom of the groove was square instead of rounded, which he would have preferred. And he told me, he said, "Hey Tom," he said, I've got this wax of the pommel. If you'd like, I could. If you'd like to buy it from me, I could have it cast up for you. I've got. He works with a company called Bailey Investment Casting over there in England, and he said I could cast this up for you if you want to buy it. And I'm like, I'd love to. Let me talk to my customer, see if he's willing to foot the bill, because I'm not gonna buy it and just give it to the guy.
Yeah.
you know but luckily, my customer was all about it. He was like, "Send me the bill,"
Yep.
you
I don't
know?
care the price, just send it.
Yeah, and so he did. He cast the bronze up for me. He used a historical mix, and I actually learned how to do historically accurate enamel work, which is basically just colored glass ground up into fine little sand,
Yeah.
and then you melt it. That's finicky, by the way.
Yeah, you won't catch me doing something like that.
That's
Will
finicky.
not.
The temperature and the time you have it in, it has to be precise, man. It took me several tries before I got it right. But yeah, so I've got that pommel on it, and the sword, the blade, the guard, all that I made. I made the guard out of antique wrought iron, which is as close a material as to what was used historically as we can get without actually stealing ancient iron off of antique relic
Yeah.
weapons. you know and so and when I had the blueprint that James gave me printed out to life size, right? And yeah, I went to the blueprint. If it said something was 1.1 millimeter, I took my calipers and I measured that on the print, and I saw that it was 1.1 millimeters exactly, right? And I used that print, and when I was done with the sword, I put it on, and it fit like a jigsaw puzzle piece. It was amazing. It worked out so good. It was so cool.
Even if I get instructions and I follow it to a T, it's still, it's like it could be a circle image, and I'll like try and
Yeah.
put a square into it and be like, "What have I done wrong?" And my
Yeah, yeah,
community
yeah.
will definitely tell you that. The detail he's just
But
gone to is awesome. Hey, Leslie, welcome in.
yeah. But yeah, so it was an amazing build. I learned a lot of things on it, and it was difficult, but it took some time and I got it done, and it now lives in Canada with a fine fella, and I wish I hadn't sold it, honestly.
So,
And,
from the moment that they came in and like started the this job, how long did this take you?
of
The
that
the
sword,
fashion.
I think I have uh, somewhere between 130 and 150 man hours into it.
Oh wow, okay. Is that a
Normally,
lot for a typical sword?
it's more than normal for me.
Yeah.
I normally put 75 to 100 hours into a sword. I take my time. I make sure the details are right. I don't rush, because if I rush, that's when the quality falls off, and I can't tolerate that.
Yeah.
It's got to be the best thing I can make. And if it's not the best thing I can make, I grind it to dust and start over again.
How many
And
times have you grinded it to dust and started over again?
there was a particular sword that gave me a lot of trouble. Um, it was the sword that I sent out the door. It was sword number 6.
Okay.
I scrapped 5 of them. And no, I don't reuse them for another project. I don't recycle them. I don't make them work unless they're viable for something just not fitting the bill, right? But in this case, no, I scrapped 5 whole swords, and it drove me nuts. I was pulling my hair out. I've got a big bald spot now. No, I,
Just
I
from
had
that
that
sword.
before. No, I had that before. But yeah, I made an early medieval Viking style sword that it wasn't really even all that hard. Just everything went wrong. Everything.
How many swords do you think you've made? Well, how many
No idea.
items?
Um,
Complete rough guess.
Around 150 swords, and probably about half that knives. of various type.
A lot, especially with the hours
So
that
it,
you've just mentioned as well.
yeah, I mean, it's not a lot for a lot of people. There are a lot of smiths out there who crank out a lot more stuff than I have. And some of them do a better job of it. Some of them don't. It's what it is. Um, my productivity has slowed down a lot over the last couple of years too, with all the arthritis and the injuries and stuff that I've got going on. So I'm kind of starting to be part time on that now too.
Okay. Mel
But
just Mel just asked if you make anything other than swords and knives.
um, occasionally, but if it hasn't got a blade on it, I'm probably not your best choice. I've occasionally made like camp cook sets like a cooking tripod and a grill.
Yeah.
You know, I made some of that stuff for I was working at a Ren fair for a while, and I made some pieces of camp gear for the Scottish encampment. Um, so I mean, yeah, a few things, and I mean I've got a degree in welding technology and welding, so I can weld. I'm a welder too. And I've done some fabrication work as a welder. I've got a big planter in my backyard right now that looks like a steel plant.
Cool.
You know, so
Cool.
so yeah, I've done other things, but mostly my passion is blades, especially swords.
Have you got a favorite, like a definite favorite?
Yeah, it's the Thorpe
It is
Falchion
the
that I made
falchion.
that lives that,
It
that
doesn't live
Paul
with you.
owns up in Canada. No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
What about one that
But
you've got? What about one that you can look at every day?
my I don't have too many yet because I can't afford to keep my own work. I don't make enough money to justify not selling a multiple $1,000 sword,
Yep.
Like my swords start the very bare bonest, plainest, most simple sword. As of 5 years ago was starting at $1,600. Nowadays, they're starting more like $2,000. But
Wow.
this is this is the sword I have kept.
Just
This is the sword I have kept.
have you got it in a
It
sheath already?
No, actually, it doesn't have a sheath. No, this one doesn't have a sheath. I didn't make this one though.
Okay.
Gus Schwinn made this one. My mentor, the guy that taught me.
Yep.
Um, and I was actually his distributor for a while. And I was a terrible businessman. I did very poorly at it. And so when I finally cleared my backlog of orders with him as his distributor, that's when I decided I could have this sword because I had ordered this sword from him before we all started, and it took many years for this sword to get to me. Um, but it's a 15th century Type 16, arming sword. In like dark and darker terms, it would be an arming sword,
Okay.
you know. And it's a type of arming sword that I love and is very nice. And it is the one and only sword I have ever owned that I have named, and it is named Invicta, which in Latin means unconquered, because it represents the fact that I overcame that horrible, terrible hole of debt that I put myself into by being a terrible businessman and not running Gus's business well for several years. And we redeemed ourselves, and we worked our way out of the hole, and we got ourselves in the clear. All swords delivered, all products delivered, all accounts balanced, but it took more time than I want to admit.
You got to make mistakes
Um,
to learn, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
And
This is one that I've been working on. This is one of mine. It's a long sword. Needs a pommel yet. I'm looking for the right piece of wrought iron. Um, but I don't know. Let's see if you can see it. You can see some of the markings on the arm guard
yep.
here, right? Um, that is that is why people love wrought iron so much, because wrought iron has a grain to it. It has it almost like Damascus, if you've heard of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what it is until fairly recently in history, um, most cultures, anywhere outside of India and the Near East, um, did not have the technology to fully liquefy steel when they were refining it. And like the Japanese, the Europeans, all those, they did not fully liquefy the steel, which meant it had lots of impurities in it, right?
Okay.
And the way you deal with this is the thing that people have heard about, and they probably misunderstand it, but you've probably heard about, oh, we got a Japanese sword here, it's made by Master Smith. They folded it 10,000 times, and you hear about folded steel, right?
Yeah.
Um, and the reason folded steel was better back in the day is because you had all these impurities in it. Like imagine you're making a bowl of chocolate chip cookies, right?
Mm.
Or whatever type of cookies you like, and you got your flour and your eggs and your milk and your chocolate chips and all that stuff is in there, and you're just starting to turn it into dough, and some jerk comes by and throws a bowl full of rocks and gravel and dust and dirt in it, right? Of course, this would irritate you. You'd throw it away and start over. But imagine for a second that your life depended on making a batch of chocolate chip cookies out of that dough. Okay.
Yep.
You
You go
had to
ahead.
do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you do? Well, you get in and you'd pick out all the big rocks and you'd try to dust off the dirt. But then some of it would be stuck in there and you're like, well, what do I do? Well, I guess I'm going to fold the dough and stretch it and mix it as much as I can. And as the larger chunks work their way to the surface, I'm going to pick them out. But there's always going to be those dusty particles you can't pick out, right?
Yep.
You know, and you've got to do something with them. So you spread them out as far as possible so that they at least don't clump together,
Yep.
right? That's what they're doing with steel, with the impurities in the steel. They couldn't get rid of them all. And the thing is, you got to remember that we're talking about a 2,000-degree material Fahrenheit, right? Um, and centigrade, it's what, like 14, 1500, something like that.
Yes.
Really, really hot, right? Will burn you to the bone in no time at all, right? So you can't just pick the stuff out. You can fold it, and as the steel compresses from the hammer blows, the gravel and the rocks that don't compress will rise to the surface, and you get a brush and you brush them out, right? But then your steel's too thin, so you fold it over and you do it again. And you fold it and you stretch it and you fold it and stretch it, and the stuff you can get out comes to the surface and you can brush it away. And the stuff you can't get out, it gets mixed around and spread around evenly, and that makes the best quality steel you can make, given the material you're working with.
Yeah.
And honestly, that's why Japanese swords are so amazing. People always talk about like, oh, how amazing the Nippon steel is, and it's the best steel ever. It's really not. It's terrible steel. The stuff they use traditionally. It was the skill and the amazing craftsmanship and artistry of the smiths that made it good.
Hmm. The Scotsmith has said, a controversial question. Do you refer it to Damascus or pattern wielded steel?
Yes, both are correct, and I'll tell you why. There's and I'll do this quick because we could spend all day talking about this, okay?
They'll
But
stay.
there are two different materials that are commonly called Damascus, okay? One is a material that is also known as pattern welded steel, where you've taken different kinds of steel, welded them together to make pretty patterns. The Vikings did this. That's how they got the pretty patterns in their Viking swords.
Okay.
And other cultures throughout history, the Merovingians, for instance, did this. Uh, lots of early medieval cultures did this. But then there also is a material called woots,
Say
which a
that
lot of
again.
people
What's the material called, sorry?
woot
Wood.
woots what Wootz
Oh,
woots
okay.
also can be poulat or crucible steel is what
Okay.
it is. Okay, and in India and some parts of Russia and some parts of the Levant and the Near East. Yeah, the Scotsman's got it. Scotsmouth's got it.
There you
Um,
go.
they perfected a technique where they would make their steel ingots in little clay crucibles, and They had the technology to heat it up hot enough that it would fully liquefy, and when it was done, they would break. They would you know they put some glass in there with it, like they put sand or glass in there, and that would make it all the impurities rise to the top, and they could knock them off. They could just break them right off the top of the ingot and have them gone, no impurities. And the stuff that became famous, there was some mines like the King Solomon's mine of yeah, that King Solomon, right? Uh, that mine has been discovered that it produced ore with high amounts of vanadium in it, which is an alloy that creates carbide chains. And they figured out that if they forged it right, there would be a pattern on the steel made by the carbide chains, right? And carbide is super, super, super hard. Like you may have heard of carbide cutting tools and stuff like that.
Yep.
It's a very modern material. Carbides are used in many modern cutting tools, right? Um, so yes, Woots at that time in history was the best steel being made anywhere in the world. Um, it's not magical, and anyone starts talking about uh, carbon nanotubes, slap them in the face, tell them to shut up and sit down. They're
Send
wrong.
them to your channel.
Yeah. Um, that'll work. That'll work. I'll do it. Um, but okay. So the legend goes that this Woots was sold in Damascus, Syria, and that was the first place that Europeans came across, like during the Crusades and what. And they came back to Europe talking about this wonderful steel, this Woots, this Damascus, which is a word that's related to damask, which is a term also used for silk, right?
Okay.
And cloth brocade, like damask dresses and stuff, um, silk and brocade, things like that, damask. And so there were some hucksters in the Middle Ages who made pattern welded steel and sold it as damask, right? Or watered steel. There's lots of different words for it. So that did happen to some extent. We don't have clear historical records as to how often or when it started exactly. We're pretty sure it happened fairly regular. There are a lot of medieval hucksters, and scammers out there. Imagine that, right? Um, there's a famous set of swords called Ulfbert swords that have the word Ulfbert inlaid into the steel of the sword, and most of the Ulfbert swords that exist in museums today were contemporary fakes,
Hmm.
stuff that was made by medieval people to cash in on the fame
Yeah.
of the Ulfbert name, right? And so historians and curators and museums have actually spent a lot of time and energy to identify which ones are the real ones. Whole nother story. Okay, so that's one origin of the term Damascus, woot steel from the Far East.
Okay.
Okay. And whether or not that gave rise to the next use of the term, no one knows for sure. But Damascus has been a term that has been used for pattern welded steel for about 400 years. We have, there are catalogs, there are recorded history of items being sold as Damascus steel, specifically and particularly gun barrels, ranging all the way back to the very beginning of firearms, right? And Damascus steel was a big thing in gun production, very early gun production. So Damascus is a proper term for either pattern welded steel or woots. But at the same time, it's also not a good term to use on the internet anymore because Damascus is in Syria, and a lot of search engines and bots go crazy when they see Damascus because they think that you're having ties to Al Qaeda and terrorist organizations. Oh, I have not gotten in trouble for this, but I know a lot of Smiths who have actually got into financial trouble. They've had their accounts shut down. They've been banned from payment processing things, banned from websites because they use the word Damascus to describe their steel. And some bot or algorithm or uninformed person linked that to Syria and possible terrorism. And so that's been yet another another chapter in the story of Damascus.
That's wild.
It's wild. It's been all over the place. Yeah.
Mel just saying forgers forging other forgers.
Yes, exactly. Forgers forging forgers forgeries.
Yeah.
Which you had that too. You had forgers forging forgers forgeries because we have people today using forgeries that were made in Victorian era that were forgeries of medieval weapons that were a forgery of another medieval weapon, and those forgers today are forging forgeries of the stuff forged before to sell them as antiques. I
that,
think I missed
that
the forge in there,
that gets
but
messy.
oh, you have no idea. I'll just say this too. My bit of advice for any of you, unless you are a subject matter expert, do not buy an antique sword from an auction house unless it has pristine provenance. All right. Unless they can trace that sword back with records of ownership and you know, don't do it because it's probably a fake. The vast majority of antique swords are fakes.
I think some of you would probably interested in buying swords or purchasing swords.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of swords that are passed off as real are antiques. As real antiques are fakes. A notable example is the sword of William Wallace in Scotland.
Really?
Great, great big old claymore. Nope, was not William Wallace's sword. Again, I have James Elmsley to thank for this. He being a sword researcher and what. Um, it cannot be conclusively proven that it's a fake, except the fact that uh, every clue that we have points to the fact that it is. But the museum won't let it be examined to the point where it could be proven conclusively. But James says he's 99.99% sure that it was made, you know, in Victorian era, you know, late to mid 19th century, probably, for political propaganda purposes.
There you go,
And it,
Mav.
and it's not his sword.
Wow.
Sorry.
Well, you definitely learn something new every day.
There's
I'm
new
glad
stuff
you're
to be
the only
learned every day.
Scottish person here, Mav, to be fair. Okay,
Yeah.
Law owns 73 swords and daggers.
Beautiful. My
Two,
man.
two walls of his bedroom are near covered, most are fantasy or gaming blades.
That's fine. You know what? A lot of people will turn their nose up at fantasy swords and stuff that's not made for use. But I mean, I won't make unusable fantasy swords.
That was
But
going to be my
you
next
know,
question.
if you like them, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't have them. I mean, Kit Ray, United Cutlery, whatever you want, man. If you can afford them and they bring you joy, by all means. Just, I will put this one thing out there. All right. If you own a sword that is not made properly, please, 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 please do not use it like a functional sword. You could hurt yourself very badly. I've known all kinds of people that have been injured terribly by poorly made swords.
Yeah, I bet you've heard a lot of stories.
Oh, yes. I've got a few scars myself.
You got to learn somehow.
Yep. And so, but yeah, it's very difficult to make a sword that is made properly, and a lot of companies that even claim to be quote unquote battle ready, they're not.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's just do your research, learn a lot of stuff, and be careful.
Arg says he owns around nine knives, two daggers, and he made the handles for
Nice.
most of them.
Oh, fantastic! I love it. There's a lot of people making swords and knives and stuff out there these days. It's become very popular. What with Forged in Fire being a big TV show now, it's really caught on. Um, you
Which
know,
you were on.
yes, I was on season 4, episode 13 of Forged in Fire. Yes, I was.
How was your experience?
Oh God, it was awesome and it was
I
surreal.
thought you was going to say awful.
And well, that too. But it was everything. Okay, real quick on that. The show was set up into 3 rounds of competition, right?
Mhm.
They make it look like round 1 and round 2 happen back to back. Like you do your 3 hours forging, and then you maybe get a potty break and grab a drink, and then you turn right around, you get judged, and you do round 2.
Yeah,
That is
straight
not
away.
how it works.
Mhm.
Not how it works, ladies and gentlemen. I did round 1 on Friday. I did round 2 on Monday,
Oh, okay.
okay? And, when I say I did it on Friday, I mean all of Friday.
The
All
whole
right,
day.
we showed up at the studio before 7 a.m. or thereabouts, and we were there until almost 11 o'clock p.m.
Long old
We
day.
had we had so many interviews, we had papers to do, I can't even tell you all the things we did, but there wasn't a lot of downtime actually.
Really?
They had you busy. I mean, a lot of your time was sitting there talking to a camera. I mean, for 3 hours of competition for one round, they probably shot 12 hours of interview footage. Like, because they want to build a story, right?
Yeah.
Because the thing you gotta understand is this is a show. They're making a story. It's entertainment, right? Yes, it's about bladesmithing, and B rolls are important. You got it. Mills, you got it. B roll is important too, right? And so, but they need to build you as a character, right? They need to make you into a character in a story, just like you're writing a novel or a TV show or a movie. You've got everyone's there's got to be a character. Some people are going to be the bad guys, some people are going to be the good guys, some people are going to be the underdog,
Yep.
right? Some people are going to be the dork that doesn't know what he's talking about. They're going to make character out of everyone. And they get enough information from you that they can make you into any kind of character they need because they don't know how the competition is going to turn out because the competition is fairly done. It is done legit and fair, right? Um, and so they don't know how it's going to come out. So they get enough footage from you to be able to cast you as whatever character they need, right? So it takes a long time. It's a lot of work, and I think the thing that really blew my mind the most is when we were done with the competition, right? And with the first round, we had to report to the camera, the makeup station, right? And they took pictures, you know, every angle imaginable. And you're like, huh. And then when you left for the day, when it was all done, like, okay, take your clothes off, give them to us, and change into the spare set of clothes we had you bring.
Things
Because
to
on
wear on
Monday, when you
Monday.
came back, you had to put those same clothes back on.
Yep.
All right. And not only that, but the makeup artists got those pictures that they took of you out and they put the makeup on they put the dirt back on you.
Oh, okay.
So in round 2, if there's a smudge on somebody's face or their hands are dirty, if their arms are dirty, that's makeup that they put on them, right, for continuity. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So that, you don't it would look weird if someone, forging their butt off, in the dirty forge and get their face covered in soot from, whatever, and dirt and, whatever. And then, in
Round
round 2,
two.
which looks like it's 10 minutes later, they're clean and sparkly like fresh out of the shower. Hi, you know, that would look weird,
Yeah, I
right?
would.
And yeah, so, but it was just a weird experience though to have dirt put on as makeup.
First thing in the morning as well.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. First thing in the morning. Uh, it was surreal just being there. I was like, wow, I'm really here. Because I mean, that was season 4. I was a fan already. They were just starting to air season 3 when I was there. Like I watched some of the first episodes of season 3 while we were there for the weekend. Because they run about a year out. And it takes about a year for that episode to come up. And so I was already a fan. I'm like, oh, this is so awesome. Totally geeked out. Left my personality at home. Forgot to pack it.
Yep. I knew I
You
forgot
know,
something.
yeah. But it was. I'm glad I did it. It put. I learned a lot from it. I learned a lot about putting myself under pressure and working with time constraints because
Mhm.
I'd always been the slow and easy worker. If things start to get sketchy or rough, and if I start falling out of my zone, if things aren't just clicking along perfect, I take my hands off the project and I walk out
Yeah.
because I don't want to grind a piece off and have it not be perfect because you can grind the steel off but you can't grind it back on.
Yeah.
some mistakes are not recoverable. So I'm very careful when I work in my shop, right? I couldn't do that there. And honestly, by my standards, the knife I made there was atrocious,
Yeah.
but it moved really, really well, and it cut really, really well. And that was what's most important to me. Like functionality
Mhm.
is my number one goal.
And going back on a little bit, um, you were saying that obviously all of your work is unique and everything you've
Yeah.
done. Is it a one of one?
Yeah. I can't make a copy of a sword I made if I wanted to.
Yeah, that's a good
I mean,
sign.
I've made swords that were similar to each other, all right? Size, length, style,
Yeah.
but you could hold them next to each other and, swap them back and forth, and you would never mistake which one was which. You'd always be like, "Oh yeah, this one's here, this one's there."
Yep.
Now, but really though, that's part of the charm of handmade items. If you're custom making handmade stuff, you don't want it to look like a 10,000 other items out there, you know?
No, you want it to
Y
be
it's
unique.
right, the value, the uniqueness is a large part of the value.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Before we jump on to different topics, any of you guys have any other questions regarding blacksmithing?
I could go on for this all week,
I
man.
think these
I
guys
kid
could.
you not, yeah.
I think these guys could.
Yeah. That's another show.
Args is this is why I learned to weld before I learned how to mill. I didn't know you could weld, Args. You definitely
Oh,
do.
yeah, great skills, man. Well, welders will never ever want for work. You know, there's and milling is really important too. Being a machinist and being a fabricator, man, super important stuff.
Alge missed what you stream. So would you just let him know what you stream again? What community
Uh,
you're in and
Mostly I stream Dungeons and Dragons online, an MMORPG. Uh, I stream Dark and Darker when it's available. Which, guess what? There's a reason we're all grinning around here today. But yeah, I stream Dark and Darker and I stream Dungeons and Dragons online. My schedule right now is a Monday through Thursday, 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. for Dungeons and Dragons online.
and
From
that's
9
central
a.m.
time, isn't it?
Central Time, yeah, Central American Time, yep, Central Time Zone. Monday mornings from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on the official Dungeons and Dragons online stream, DDO stream. And Friday nights I do 6 to 9 p.m. And I'm going to have to work Dark and Darker in here somewhere too. Maybe it's time I become a full-time content creator. I don't know.
There you go. Just to follow on, Mel just asked, do you stream smithing at all?
No. I have done in the past, but it's very difficult to set up. It's loud, it's noisy, it's dangerous. It's very easy to knock your camera around and damage your equipment. It's very, very difficult to be able to speak in any way that's understandable to your audience. It's very hard to interact with the audience because your hands are busy,
Yep.
so you can't type, and it's very, very loud, so it's difficult to talk, right? Um, it's a very, very difficult setup, and I don't have the patience to work it out. So sorry, no,
I think that would be
no,
cool, but
yeah,
yeah.
it is cool. Oh, no doubt about it. It's very cool. You got people like Alex Steele, and like he's one of the big ones that do forging videos and stuff. And when it's done well, fantastic. It's great content. And you can learn a lot from some of it too.
Args studied engineering at uni before he went to software. Where's the question? The favorite blade profile you've made?
Falchions. I
Yeah.
love falchions. I love falchions. And they're not all just one type. There's a whole bunch of different types of falchions. Do a Google search for Elmsley typology. Elmslie. Elmsley. That's my buddy James. James, he's writing an academic typology for historical falchions, and it's amazing how many there are. But Uh, the Thorpe Falchion is one of my favorites. The Machowski, or sometimes people call it Masiejowski Falchion, is one of my favorites. Yeah, I love falchions. Love them, love them, love them.
And when you were talking about the arming sword that you had, you said it was like type 15 or 16?
16, yeah.
How many types of arming swords are there?
The oak shot typology goes from 10 to 20, but it's got subtypes for a lot of the types. So there's like a 10A, there's an 11, and there's an 11A, there's a 12B, a 12A, a 12, a 13B, a 13A, and 18's got A, B, C, D, E. You know,
And
I never really counted how many there are.
how small could the differences be? I bet they are minute.
You know, there are some types that are easy to confuse. Sometimes that people can, it's really easy to mix certain types one the other, not because the typological differences are all that small, but that you got to understand that a typology is a modern thing. It's a modern system that we have applied to historical items that were not being made by a codified system, right?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of antique swords that you look at and like, okay, that looks like a 12. And then, 20 years down the line, you're like, I've done a bunch of research. I think it's more like 15 or a 20 or a 16 or something else, right? Or maybe even a 10A. 10A and 12 are actually have a pretty close similarity to them. So, and the other thing to remember too is where Ewart Oakshott made this typology. Ewart died in the early 2000s, and he was active from about 1960s, right? Um, and he made this typology based on things he observed of antiques, but these antiques had already lived a full life. They had been polished and ground and resharpened and damaged and resharpened. And a lot of times, that changes the profile, it changes the shape of the sword, it changes the feel of the sword. So, there were swords that Mr. Oakshott assigned to one type and then years later reassigned to a new type. So it's more of a guideline and not a hard system.
Okay, yeah. Makes sense.
That's an important thing to remember.
So going in, changing topic now, guys. I know you guys could talk about this more, but if you did want to talk about it more, you can check out Tuff's streams. I'm
Yeah, I'm
sure
always happy
Tuff.
to talk. I'm always happy to talk swords when playing DDO. Absolutely, I'll do it all day long for you.
Now, we all now know that you've got a lot of experience as a blacksmith, and I found out that you are also in the development team with one of the games that we found as a community, Dread.
Yeah,
And you joined them due to your knowledge of being a swordsmith. And
yeah. I
how did
found
that
them.
happen?
Well, I found them right after Playtest 5 Dark and Darker closed. I was having a great time. I loved it. And of course, just like everyone else who was in the Dark, I was like, now what do I do? Right?
What
And
game can I play now?
yeah, and then I saw a video by some guy named Azzy that said Dark and Darker has competition, maybe, right? And so I said, oh, that looks cool. And I saw, their little opening animation, the videos they had. I'm like, oh, that looks a little bit different. That's got more of a horror aspect to it and kind of a dark fantasy look. I'm like, that's cool. So I went to the Discord and I started checking it out and I, talked to them and, at one point, of course, I'm like, hey, look, I was looking at your videos and can we talk about these swords? Because guys, they're not great. You can do better, And we talked and we talked, and the lead developer Demso and I talked a bit, and I guess he liked what he heard. And before I knew it, he was like, "Hey, man, you want to play test the game?" And I'm like, sure, you know. And so we started play testing, and um, like when I joined the team, it was in rough state. It was very, very, very early. I discovered, like, one of the first things I discovered was that after you were killed by a monster, you could wiggle your mouse and make your camera change angle, and the camera changing angle would cause your body to have a ragdoll reaction, make your body flop around. And so I learned I could do two things. I could make my body flop around like a fish out of water,
Yep.
and also I can swing my sword, make an attack. You wouldn't see the sword attack, but you could damage an enemy.
Yeah.
And Dimsum actually posted a video of a character bouncing around like a rubber ball, running into a skeleton archer and killing the skeleton archer. That was my gameplay footage. I was like, "Hey man, look at this bug I found. Look what I can do. They killed me and I can bounce around and still take out mobs. You probably ought to fix that." you
It
know?
he's definitely come a long way. I think I
Yeah.
will definitely put myself to blame a little bit on this, but the day after I made that video, the Discord absolutely blew up. And
Well, I mean, yeah, yeah.
he's taken it on by full swing. I'll give him that. And he's been completely transparent with the progress and his thoughts and his visions and what he wants from the game. It's come on leaps
I
and
think so. Yeah.
bounds.
Oh yeah.
It's come on leaps and bounds. Now, is it going to be a Dark and Darker killer, or is it going to replace it? I think they're
Killer,
going to
no
be
way.
two different games.
No way is it going to be a killer. Absolutely not. No. Um,
It's a good
eh,
handful of years behind Dark and Darker's development.
yeah. Oh, definitely. And remember, Dark and Darker is working with a full team. They had 10 people leave Nexon, and they're up to like 30 some people now, right?
Yep.
Um, and Melgy said the question is, I'm sure is on everyone's mind. When do we get another peak? I don't know, but probably soon.
He's
Um,
told me soon,
yeah,
because I had access to the playtest as well,
yeah,
and seeing that
right.
it was just a single dev, and what people are not understanding is when you usually get alpha footage leaked, or sorry, alpha footage, like gameplay from the development company and from the team, it's quite far on in the process, whereas this
And
was
it's curated.
very early
They give you
days.
when they release stuff, we tend to want to release the best stuff.
Of course,
You don't show all the bugs and the failings because I mean that wouldn't help.
no, no.
But yeah, yeah, I'm real active with the team. I'm testing the game daily. Yeah, it's a trademark soon for sure. But I mean, so much has changed from the early days. It's a whole different game. We're getting all sorts of stuff happening. It's really cool. We've had several setbacks. We've had several setbacks that really slowed things down for a while. Netcode was one of them, and I'm not a coder in any way, shape, or form. If I can't make it work by hitting it with a hammer, I'm kind of lost. All right, okay. Um, but yeah, it's looking great. But like Netcode, player versus player, I know that we had a plugin that we were using to handle the server stuff, and it had some real problems.
Okay.
And we spent a lot of time trying to work through those problems. Well, Demsum did, not me.
Yep.
I was just the guy telling him still doesn't work,
No,
and
not working.
he's like, I know it. But he spent a lot of time talking with the developer of the plugin. They spent a lot of time working back and forth. We've got a guy that's part of the team that does. I think we've got two server guys now. The
Okay.
team's growing.
The team is
Team's growing.
growing.
We've got a programmer that's working on inventory and data management type of stuff, um, which is freeing them some up to do more interesting things like monsters and creating enemies. And we've got a guy that's working on maps. We've got a specific map dev. So the team is growing.
Definitely.
Um, but yeah, there were several steps along the way where things just ground to a dead stop for a while because it was a difficult problem, and Dempsey just didn't have the manpower to work through it in a timely manner. That's what happens when you're one person trying to code something as complex as a video game.
Yeah.
I mean, swords are complex, but video games, it's another order. I mean, and as the game progresses and gets more interesting, it also gets more complex, which means it gets harder to fix problems. It's like every time you put something new in, every time you change something, there's always the possibility that 15 other things break. And if you're lucky, you find 10 of the 15 things that broke and you can fix them if you're lucky, you know?
Yep. So,
So, yeah.
how was your experience, or how have you enjoyed adding, I'd say, features to the game? Because obviously your input has probably changed a lot of
I
play.
have I have designed several swords that are in use in the game.
Nice.
Um, Mostly Dempson bought asset packs, and
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, we need to change this to be that. We need to change that to be this. We put this together with that. Put that together with this. So it was kind of like building with Lego blocks more than it was like drawing stuff out, right?
Yep.
Um, but so I've had a lot of input there. Um, I've had some input on how features work. I haven't actually made any of the changes to the game myself, obviously, because you wouldn't want me to put my hands on it. I'm not that guy. But you know, like I've talked that I've been a major player in the discussions into combat and how it should work. Because I do have 30 years of medieval combat, reenactment experience. And so, I've done a lot of advising, and a lot of the stuff that I've said, hey, we should look into doing like this or that has been taken.
Good.
And a lot of it we're just not ready for yet. The game needs to have all its foundation in place and working properly before we can do fancy things like custom sword fighting animations or
Yeah.
you know stuff like that. It's just you don't put the cart before the horse, right?
No, 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 you definitely don't. And that's why I do appreciate, especially from a streamer and just a consumer side of things, when you see the passion behind the devs and you see the transparency behind the devs, that is something big for me. So I've been
Yeah,
working. I wouldn't say working. I've been helping closely with
yeah.
Demson, the lead developer on Dread, and then there's a few other games that I'm speaking with their dev team,
Yeah.
and it's
Um, a buddy of mine who does like Viking and migration era reenactment stuff, I, I I put him into contact with the team that's working on Nine Realms, and so hopefully Henry's working with them because that kid knows so much about that time period. He'll be a big asset to them. Hopefully, he'll be Nine Realms as Tom. But Nine Realms is looking good. There's a lot of other games that are coming that are looking to be in this genre. You know.
I think Dark and Darker has definitely planted the seed, and people have
Oh,
gone,
no doubt,
hold
no doubt.
on, this could be something. It's the whole. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but a game that I started streaming on was Escape from Tarkov, and
Oh yeah, I'm familiar with it. I
it
don't play it, but I'm familiar.
that's done the same. It's a hardcore looter shooter survival RPG game, and then Dark and Darker have just gone. That's a good idea. Let's add this fantasy to it,
Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's
and
do it in Dungeons and Dragons.
yeah, because they know
Yeah.
that people are gonna want it. And like you said,
Oh yeah.
the whole nerd like vibe is going to the surface, and
Absolutely.
look at everyone now.
a- and I mean, there have been games that were kind of similar. I mean, there was that random dungeon mod for Chivalry
Yep,
years back.
yep,
Um, you can even argue that the first extraction looter game was Thief. It
yeah, yeah,
wasn't PvP, but there were many missions, not all of them, but there were a lot of missions that one of your goals was you had to get back to where you came from. You had to get out, right?
yeah.
Or you had to find a way out. And sometimes you had to find a creative way out, right? And so there's roots all over the place with no one game really being 100%,
Yep.
but multiple games being 60 or 75% or 50% or 80% or 30%. And so it's all out there. you
It's
know
it's good to see. I'm currently well, I was in some form of gaming funk until this afternoon.
Today.
Until this afternoon, my streamer like, "Have you heard the news? What news? Have you heard the news?" And then I think someone put "hold the line" in chat, and I was like, "No, you're taking the mick here. This isn't
Right.
real. This isn't real." And then Mel sent me a DM with Dark and Darker tweeting saying today, and I was like, I might have
uh
to do the AzzCast within a dungeon. I said,
yeah, yeah, I mean,
we may have to go to the dungeon and then continue the AzzCast, but I don't think it's even live yet. I think they're waiting.
I'm a proud member of the Order of the Holy Ninth.
Okay.
Um, and I just want to give a shout out to the guys in the Order of the Ninth. They have uncovered so much information and been so on top of things. It's been amazing. I'm sure that there are other guilds out there who have been watching Dark and Darker and getting things figured out. But these guys have caught every twitch, man. Like Derp Wigglies is one of us, and he's been covering the court cases, and you know, and it's been just amazing to watch the Order of the Ninth Discord server going bananas,
Yeah.
you know, and like the Dark and Darker official Discord, not as much fun. There's a lot of chaos there, a lot of trolling and just
Yeah.
dumbness there. But when you get into a specific community, uh, yeah, it's a lot more fun. And I've really, really, really enjoyed the Order of the Ninth, and I'm sure that I have found my my dark and darker home with those guys. So
So
shout out to you guys. You're awesome. Thanks for having me.
nothing better when a community comes together and everyone just feels welcome in the place.
Generally, yeah. And I like them because they're a good, wholesome community. I know that Dark and Darker is a hardcore game, and by that nature, it's going to attract
The
some of the
sweats, the
dirtier,
hardcores.
some of the dirtier gamers. Not even the sweaty guys, because like the guys that are really sweaty, and serious about it, they're generally pretty well behaved because they don't want to get in trouble and get kicked out, and so they're generally pretty well behaved. It's the guys who think they're sweaty but aren't really sweaty.
Yeah.
It's the wannabe sweaties
Yeah.
that get toxic,
Hmm.
right? So you're going to have, because you've got such a huge community. I mean, what is it? 400,000 people on the official Discord today,
Yep.
right? Um, when you have that many people and that sort of a game environment, you're going to get the nasties come out. But the Order of the Holy Ninth guys are really, really cool and really wholesome. Uh, and like the only game communities I've seen that are anywhere near that wholesome is like the Dungeons and Dragons online community. Super wholesome, right? Mostly because Dungeons and Dragons online is a low stakes, like no one really cares about it, kind of little bitty game now, right?
Okay.
And so the only people we got left are the chill people.
Yeah. Which,
But I'm too
yeah.
old for that drama, you know.
I mean, I'm
I'm too old
30
for
and
that.
I'm too old for that.
I'm 50, man.
I'm too old for it. Way
I'm
too old.
half I'm half a century old. All right.
Couple of your favorite games, favorite bands or music, and favorite films. So we'll start with games first.
Games, okay. Well, Dungeons and Dragons, of course. I love the Dungeons and Dragons. As far as role-playing games, also a big one for me was Paranoia. Let's see, Rifts, uh, BattleTech. I used to play the old BattleTech board tabletop strategy game a lot. Uh, I played. There was a store called Virtual World in the mid '90s that did one of the very first player versus player video game environments, where they
Okay.
had like old fashioned pods, like video game pods, like you see for like the racing games and stuff,
Yep.
and they put them in a warehouse, and they linked them together through like a LAN, you know, and you played their version of BattleTech. And for the time, it was super high speed. It was really good. I loved the virtual world BattleTech system. I was a big fan. Um, uh, I also a big fan of an old fighting game. Like there are two fighting games that are the best fighting games ever made. One of them's fairly old, and one of them's brand new. One of them is called Bushido Blade, and it's an old PlayStation game. And it was a Japanese katana sword fighting game. No health bars, nothing like that. Using fairly accurate historical techniques. If you hit a person good, you could. Cat, leave the sword alone, dude. Don't hurt yourself. Um, he's curious about my sharp. Um, but you could take an arm or a leg off, give him a wound, and make him limp, or just straight kill him with one shot. Right?
Yep.
You want to go up to your spot? Let me help. Let me help, buddy. This is my baby. This is Quinn. But but
Tough
it
also
was it
has
was
4 cats and a dog.
yes, I love them all. Uh, but it was fast. It was brutal. You could like one shot if you did it right. Sometimes the fight would be kind of long and it would end suddenly. It was a lot of fun. Second best fighting game ever made. The first best is something that's pretty brand new that I just started playing called Hellish Court. And again, it's a historical fencing game. And its basic mode is almost like a side scroller type of Street Fighter kind of fight, except
Yep.
it's more three dimensional, right?
Yep.
Which Bushido Blade was that also. It's got it does have a first person option, and it's still in like beta release, early access kind of a thing.
Okay.
But again, historical context, no health meters, lots of fun. The fights can be over instantaneously, or they can take a long time and be bloody and nasty, and it's really good, really high quality. Um, and like when I'm making a pen and paper role playing game system, Tower Universal Fantasy, and as you can guess with the things that I like, I don't have hit points in my system. You have conditions,
Hmm.
you're you're in good condition, you're hurt, you're wounded, you're incapacitated, you're in mortal danger, and that affects your performance. So like in Dungeons and Dragons, like I've seen a meme that sums it up great. It's like hit points. As long as I have more than 0, I'm good to go. You know,
Yep.
which is true. I mean, you could be a somebody with like 50 hit points and go out there and get beat up for 10 or 12 rounds and be down to 1 hit point. And when you started with 55 or something, that's got to be a lot of hurt. You don't fight the same when you've been beat up, right? You don't. You can't. That's not how it works, right? And games like D&D don't reflect that. You work at in D&D, you work at full efficiency, full strength, all the way down until you hit 0 hit points and you fall over. Right?
S- So, with
Um,
your love for the D&D
yeah.
genre, what's your thoughts on Baldur's Gate?
I think it's cool. I remember seeing talk about the Baldur's Gates video games from 1 and 2, but I never played them because it just so happened that I was not in a place during that time period in my life when I had the ability to get the games and play them, and you
Yep.
know, and now that Baldur's Gate 3 has come out and it looks amazing, it looks great. And I really like the thing they have where it can interact with the streamers community, and so the
Yep.
the people
The
watching the stream
overlays.
can interact with it. Yeah, I think that's really cool.
Hmm.
I think it's got a lot of potential, but it's not for me because
Okay.
I've moved on to different kinds of games, and so I mean, I think it's great. I think it's cool, and I'm glad to see it. But you're not going to see me playing it.
Okay. That surprises me because
Well, I don't play a lot of games at once
okay.
because I tend to sink deep into the game I play,
Yep.
and there's just not enough hours in the day for me to have more than a couple games. Like right now, I'm playing Dark and Darker, Dungeons and Dragons
You're playing
Online,
right now.
Hellish Court. Well, not this exact second, but soon.
Soon, soon.
Uh, Hellish Court. I even streamed a little bit of MechWarrior Online recently when Dungeons and Dragons Online had a down day.
So your basket's pretty full already then.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I've actually got more video games on my plate right now than I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
Probably MechWarrior Online is going to be relegated to something I don't play very often anymore, and it kind of already is. Hellish Court's probably only going to be a now and then. It's going to be DDO and Dark and Darker for me. So I'm a video game monogamist.
Okay.
So I got to pick and choose what my favorites are, and
Yeah.
that's what I do.
Favorite
Uh,
films? Oh, go on.
Films. Well, recently, I loved the Dungeons and Dragons movie Honor Among Thieves. I have been waiting my whole dang life for there to be a movie branded Dungeons and Dragons that did not suck. And not
So
only did it not suck, it was actually quite good.
okay.
So
So
that's a big one,
so that's a vote for me to watch it then.
right? Oh, you haven't watched it yet? You should.
Not yet.
It's good. Yeah, it's good. Um, I took my wife to the movie theater last weekend because she had had a rough week, and we went and saw a movie that really surprised me at how really honestly good it was, and that
There's,
was the Barbie
I was going
movie.
to say there's only two options.
I saw the Barbie movie,
Okay.
and I loved it. It was fun.
Okay.
Now, you got to let go of your man place a little bit,
Hey,
guys.
we're
All
we're
right?
we're fine with that here.
Okay? It's satire. It's really well done satire.
Okay.
You've got to understand what's going on in the world. You've got to understand what's going on with like girls and Barbie dolls. And I do have a daughter, so I do know some things about Barbie dolls. I mean, my daughter's 30 and married, but I have a daughter.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
been through that. All right. I've been through the whole game from start to finish with a daughter. All right. I've reached end game. I've won. She's yeah. So yeah, Barbie movie, fantastic. Best top favorites movie list? No, but really, actually, really good though. Really, definitely worthwhile. So definitely watch it.
Okay.
Um,
What's one that you're going to throw on at any time of the day? And you think, yeah, I'll watch this. I'll enjoy this.
The Princess Bride,
Princess Bride.
best movie ever. Fight me.
Are you going to stream DDO this afternoon?
Yes.
Or until Dark and Darker comes out? Or are you just going to
Um,
go through all DDO?
I probably will switch over. I'm definitely going to start with DDO. That's my core viewership,
Yep.
you know, and it's what I'm scheduled with. So I mean, if Dark and Darker becomes available, if I can download it in the next half hour, I might not
You
do
may
much
start.
DDO today. I might not do much DDO today.
So with DDO, is it because I've played like World of Warcraft and other MMOs like that? Is it kind of the same sense of an MMO, or has it got more traits because it's the Dungeons and
I think
Dragons?
it's I think it's a different experience entirely.
Okay.
Let's see if I can sum this up. One thing that DDO doesn't do is fetch quests, right?
Okay.
Like people often talk about World of Warcraft like, oh, it gets really fun when you get to level cap. You know, you grind for X amount of hours, you get your tune to level cap, and that's where it gets to be fun.
Yep.
I can't do that. I'm not going to touch that. That drives me bananas. DDO is fun from level 1 all the way to the top. And when you get to the top, you're not stuck there. They've got a reincarnation system where you can reincarnate your character, go all the way back to level 1, get some new abilities, get some new powers, get a little bit stronger, and then level up as a new class or whatever you want,
So there's a
right?
lot of replayability.
There are, I think it lasts something like 180 some possible past lives that you can get in the game.
Okay.
You know, I mean, there are people that will grind out a character, and even professional streamers, it'll take them a year or more. Like people that are hardcore speedrunners can take them, many months, if not years, to get all the past lives, to get
Wow.
all the accolades, all the stuff. It's huge. But you don't have to do all that to have fun to be good. It's every quest has a story. There's something going on. There's there's factions that evolve in the stories across several story arcs as you go along, as you level up, and you can be as much into that as you want. You can read all the stories and really get into them, or you can just kind of click through and still understand what's going on and play the game, right?
Yep.
Um, it's no, I have not done Gloomhaven. Wait, no, the Gloomhaven board game I have done. I don't know if it's a video game. If it is, I haven't tried it. But while it is an MMORPG and does rely heavily on stats, it's not 100% stat reliant. So player skill does have a lot to do with your success.
Yep.
You can you can dodge attacks, like if a goblin shoots an arrow at you from a distance, you can you can turn real hard and dodge it, and it doesn't even get an attack roll. Or you can hide behind a solid object and it won't hit you. Doesn't even get a roll, right? Um, there's there's a lot of strategy you can use, and I appreciate that. I like being able to think and apply whatever intelligence I'm able to muster to the game, right?
Hmm.
And I think that Dungeons and Dragons Online is a really good mix between strategy and statistics,
Okay.
and it is D&D branded, so that's all very familiar.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but there's a lot that's taken liberty with too, because I mean, it's not turn-based, right? So,
Oh boy.
I think it's a really good mix. I think it's a fantastic game, and it's still being actively produced too. It's 17 years old and it's not in maintenance mode, right? There's new content coming out every quarter.
Yeah.
So it's the company Standing Stone Games. They do Dungeons and Dragons online, and they do Lord of the Rings online, which I understand Lord of the Rings is a really good game too. And they're both 17 years old, and they're both still going strong, and they're in the best place they've ever been. Well, if you ever give it a try, I mean, come over to my channel where I'm very new player friendly. I play on the biggest studio server, which is Orion currently, and I'm happy to help people out who are new to the game and give you pointers. And DDO is a very, very deep game. There's more information there than anyone's going to be able to pick up like quickly. You know, you play for 6, 8 months, you are just starting to scratch the surface of what you need to know.
If you guys are interested in talking more about writing, was it fiction you're writing?
Yeah, I try to be a fantasy writer. Yeah.
Okay. If you're a fan of anything within the blacksmithing genre or realm, shall I say, anything developing or helping, maybe you're interested in Dread or other things that Tough gets his hands onto, or if you just want someone laid back, and as you can see here, has been a brilliant chap to sit and talk with us and have a chinwag. If you guys want to go and have a look at his Twitch, it is in the description. It is also underneath his camera. You can see the title or his name, where you'd find that on Twitch. He will be live after this, I believe.
Soon, yes, yeah, very soon. Yep.
Depending on what happens in the next 15 minutes or so, I guess.
Yep.
We don't know what game he's going to be playing.
I'll probably start with DDO.
Sounds good.
Regardless.
Well, I appreciate you hanging out with us this afternoon. Well, midday.
It was a great time, Azzy. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, thanks everybody.
Thanks for the time. Thanks for the time. It's been awesome. No, honestly, I appreciate it. But guys, thank you for chilling out with us. I'll keep you guys updated on Discord, and this video will be live on YouTube by Friday. The date would be the 11th, I believe. Yes, Friday the 11th. This will be on YouTube for everyone to see. I'll see you all in our time, probably in the morning. I doubt Dark and Dark is coming out this evening. So I'll see you all soon. Take it easy. If you want to watch live and interact with our guests, exclusive behind-the-scenes access and discounts, then head on over to patreon.com/AzzCast. Thanks for watching, guys.